Hello again, everyone. This time my film is going to be slightly different. You've probably noticed by the title of the thumbnail, Stepping Back 50 Years. And it's no exaggeration, because the first serious 35mm camera that I owned, in actual fact, probably more than 50 years ago. And that, for those of you that have watched the channel before, is my beloved Yashica Minister 3. 35mm rangefinder camera, manufactured from 1963 for a couple of years, I think, until they went electronic. And I'm going to give you a rundown of this before coming back to you to finish off this little speech. But I don't want you to think it's just simply a rundown of an old 35mm rangefinder film camera, because for the first time in at least 10 years, I've decided I'm going to put a roll of film through a camera. The Yashica Minister 3 I haven't used since I was about 17 or 18 years old. It's a long time ago, believe me. So I've been toying with the idea of using film for a while again, and I thought to myself, well, there's no point in me perhaps using the old Zenit 3M that I still have. I don't want to purchase a more upmarket 35mm film camera, so why not put a film through Old Faithful? And that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you a quick rundown on the Minister 3 beforehand, and then I'll come back to you and finish off part one of what's going to be a two-part stepping back video. So here we are, the Yashica Minister 3, which came to the market in 1963 as a 35mm rangefinder camera, non-interchangeable lens, and it is fitted with a 45mm 2.8 Yashica lens, which I believe from memory is 5 elements in 6 groups. It's completely manual. There is no battery required to operate this at all, because the exposure meter is a selenium cell, this circular item here. Selenium meters generate their own electrical current, and as long as you are able to keep them out of daylight or sunlight, then they should retain their ability to generate that electrical current. And I've been fortunate enough, ever since I bought this camera, it's either been in a cupboard in its case or out on one of my display units, but it's always had the original lens cap fitted to it. And because of that, the meter is still working perfectly, which is great. But as I say, no battery compartment whatsoever underneath, as you can see. I'll go into the details on that shortly. Fairly long rangefinder base. The actual viewfinder window is here, and as you can probably tell, the rangefinder is here. So there's about a 30-40mm rangefinder base, which is not bad for a camera of this type. It was never intended to be in the market to compete with the likes of Leica or Canon. Mid-range camera, but it's always had, Yashica cameras have always had a good name for optical quality. And I'm going to be really interested to see how this thing performs when I actually put film into it. I suppose you could say that I'm a bit of a camera fetishist, in as much as in days gone by when film cameras ruled the roost and digital cameras were a thing of science fiction, I would quite often sit quite happily at home just operating my cameras. Now, this isn't one of the best cameras to demonstrate that to you. But if you think, for those of you that remember the days, if you think of cameras like the Nikon F2, Leica M3, Pentax Spotmatics, they all have a superb mechanical wind-on and shutter action. And I could sit for hours just doing that. And for those of you that wonder, that's not a bad thing to do. There's nothing worse than having a camera sitting on a shelf or in its case, never being used, the shutter never being cocked and primed and released. It's always a good idea to actually dry fire them from time to time. And it's certainly the case with this. However, the wind-on mechanism on the Minister 3, it's not one that you can inch, as we used to say. It is a continuous throw, because once you let go of it, it sticks in position, as you can see. So you can't sort of inch it along. It has to be a continuous throw, and then it releases. The top plate is fairly straightforward. The lever, advance, frame counter, which automatically resets when you open the back. The shutter release, which is threaded for a conventional old style plunger type cable release. A cold shoe. There is no hot shoe connection. This predates the vast majority of hot shoes. And your rewind knob and handle is on the far left hand side of the top plate. For flash purposes, there is a PC socket here on the very end, X only, which means it's synchronized for electronic flash, not bulb. Even back in '63, the days of bulb flash were very much numbered. Now, the exposure meter I'll come on to in a second, but basically that's this little window here with an adjustable dial. The important part of the camera is the lens and lens barrel. The ring at the back is your focusing ring, and it focuses down to round about, let me just see for example, it's actually down to 2.6 feet or 0.8 of a meter. So that's marginally better than some of its contemporaries, I think. The average for rangefinder cameras, shortest focal distance is round about 3 feet. But that's nicely damped. And for those of you that have never used a rangefinder, basically when you look through the viewfinder here, there is a small, and I do mean small, yellow rectangle. And the idea is that you superimpose the two images within that little yellow rectangle, and once they overlap, then you know that the item you are looking at is in focus. With any rangefinder camera, it's very important not to drop it or bang it hard in any way, shape or form, because once the rangefinder goes out of adjustment, your focusing becomes practically impossible. Now, the controls on the lens itself, just let me turn it round so you can at least have them the right way up to you guys viewing the video. You have a ring at the very front which is marked in red, and these are exposure values, EV values. And the exposure metering system on this camera is very simple. What you do initially is to turn this little dial at the top here so that it registers the same as the speed rating of whatever film you decide to load in the camera. Once that is set, and I'm just going to leave it where it is for now, I can't even see what it's set to, but once that is set, then basically you can decide on the shutter speed that you wish to use. At the moment it is set to, where are we, 125th of a second. And then you look at your exposure meter needle down here, and let's say, for example, it is shown as lining up with the number 10, you would turn the front dial on the lens to 10. So you are matching the exposure meter reading to the EV value on the lens, and that is automatically changing the aperture value in this little window down here. Not sure if you'll be able to pick that up, but as I turn the EV ring, it actually changes the aperture value. And conversely, I should say, if you change the shutter speed, it will automatically give you a different aperture value. So what I am going to do is to literally load this with film in a second. I'm going to use it exactly as it is intended. I am going to rely on the exposure meter. I'm going to trust the film isn't completely shot, even though it expired in, where are we, January 2007. I'm going to leave everything exactly as it is and see what the results come out like. If we look at the base of the camera, very, very simple. You've got a 1/4 inch Whitworth tripod socket on the center line of the lens. We have a release clutch for the rewind mechanism. You have the release mechanism here, which is a little bit fiddly. You push it down and across, and the back will hinge open for you. Now, the film. I went online to a very well-known auction site, and the gentleman was selling some outdated rolls of Fujifilm. It's Superior. It's the 400 ASA ISO, actually, and there we are. Now, it looks pretty good to me. Fujicolor Superior Extra. 24 shots, 400 ISO, or ASA, as we used to have it called back in the day. So it's time to load this. I must have done it thousands, if not tens of thousands of times over the years. With any 35mm camera, probably with the exception of early rangefinder Leicas, the loading procedure is always the same. Push the rewind crank up, drop the cassette in the back of the camera, and then secure it back in place so it can't go anywhere. Now I'm doing this upside down, so forgive me for being a little bit clumsy, but with the Yashica, all we do is rotate the take-up spool, pop in the tongue of the film, just need to make sure I've still got this in shot. Yes, I have. Okay, and holding that in place, let's see if we can get it to actually engage. Looks like it is doing. There we go. So the key with any 35mm film loading technique is to make sure that the perforations are lined up with the teeth on the take-up cogs. If you're happy with that, you can then close the back of the camera. And the important thing, again, with any 35mm film loading operation, is to take up the slack on the rewind crank. So just wind it clockwise until it tightens, which is there. And then when we wind on and activate the shutter, this should rotate, and that will indicate to me that the film is actually being transported. So that's 1, 2, and the next time I wind it on, it will actually be registering number 1 on the frame counter here on the right hand side of the top plate. So I'm quite comfortable with the fact that that's been loaded. It's now ready to go, and what I'm going to do is to take this out over the next few days. I have 24 shots to use. Goodness knows what I'm going to be photographing. I have no idea as things stand. But once I have shot all 24 exposures, I'm going to send it off to be processed. And you will be seeing all the results, whether they are good or bad. I think it's only fair to show you exactly what comes out. As far as I can tell, listening to the shutter speeds, they are still accurate. I've got to put my faith in the film and the processing, but we will see what the results look like in a couple of weeks' time when I get them back, and you will be the first to see them online, that's for sure. Well, there you have it. My Yashica Minster 3 is now loaded with Fuji color negative film. I'm not going to do anything fancy with it. I'm going to get it processed probably through a local store like Max Spielman here in the UK. I just want to see what this will deliver, what the scans are going to be like. Probably not very good, but I just think it's going to be interesting for me to actually go out and about with Old Faithful to see if it's still capable of delivering the goods. It is, of course, an outdated film, so I'm running the risk of some weird and wonderful colour casts and things like that. We will see, and you will see in a couple of weeks' time. But for now, you know very well what I'm going to say. Enjoy your photography. Old film, new film, digital, video. See you all very soon. Bye for now.